3 legions were gone, but Rome never forgets. The forest had humiliated the empire, shattered its pride, and killed thousands of its soldiers. But now, Rome was planning a vengeance so calculated, so relentless, that Germania would feel the weight of every Roman soldier for generations to come. Augustus was in shock. When the news of the Varus disaster reached him, the historian Suetonius tells us he would beat his head against the walls of his palace, crying out, "Quinctilius Varus, give me back my legions." The loss of the 17th, 18th, and 19th legions was more than a military defeat. It was a deep psychological wound. The empire mourned, but it did not crumble. In the aftermath, Rome reorganized. The city was gripped by a quiet, determined fury. Legions were rebuilt, not just with fresh recruits, but with seasoned veterans called back to service. Training intensified. New recruits drilled from dawn until dusk, their movements becoming a single, fluid machine of war. The forges of the empire burned day and night, reforging the finest steel into gladius swords and pilum javelins. Armor was reinforced, shields strengthened. Logistical masters worked tirelessly, fortifying supply lines and building new roads that pushed ever closer to the Rhine frontier. Engineers, the unsung heroes of the Roman war machine, began constructing a chain of formidable forts along the river, turning the natural barrier into a springboard for invasion. Germania, the land that had swallowed 3 of their eagles, became a symbol of lost honor, a stain on the empire's legacy that had to be cleansed. The mission was clear: vengeance. It wasn't just about reclaiming territory, it was about reasserting Roman dominance and making an example of those who dared to defy the eagle. The future emperor Tiberius, and later his nephew Germanicus, were entrusted with this monumental task. They weren't just generals, they were the instruments of an empire's wrath. Rome swore vengeance, swore. And when Rome swore an oath, the world listened. Across the Rhine, the Germanic tribes, buoyed by their victory, were largely unaware of the storm gathering on their horizon. They had fought for their freedom and won, but they underestimated the methodical, obsessive nature of Roman resolve. While the tribes returned to their internal rivalries and village life, Roman scouts, known as exploratores, were already at work. These men were phantoms, slipping through the dense, dark forests of Germania that had once been a death trap. They moved silently, mapping the treacherous terrain, identifying ambush points, and studying the patterns of tribal movements. They learned the secret paths, the locations of villages, and the weaknesses in their defenses. This intelligence was funneled back to Roman command, where strategists pored over maps, planning every detail of the coming campaign. The new legions, 8 of them now poised on the Rhine, were a different breed from those lost with Varus. They marched in perfect, disciplined formations, their hobnailed boots striking the earth in a single, thunderous rhythm. This wasn't a reckless charge into the unknown. It was a meticulous and systematic advance. Supplies were secured at every step, with heavily guarded convoys ensuring the army would never be cut off. Flanks were protected by auxiliary cavalry, their eyes scanning the tree lines for any sign of ambush. This was a new kind of war for Germania, one waged not just with swords, but with engineering, logistics, and intelligence. Rome's revenge was patient, precise, and as inevitable as the rising sun. The gears of the greatest military machine in history were turning, and their destination was the heart of the land that had shamed them. At dawn, 6 years after the Teutoburg disaster, the command was given. Under the brilliant and ambitious General Germanicus, Roman legions crossed the Rhine and entered the hostile forests of Germania. This time, there would be no mistakes. The campaign began with a series of lightning-fast surprise attacks. Roman forces descended upon the villages of the Marsi tribe, who were caught completely off guard during a religious festival. What followed was a brutal but effective demonstration of Roman power. The attack was designed to spread terror and chaos, shattering the confidence of the tribal coalition. As word of the Roman invasion spread, Germanic warriors, led by their hero Arminius, scrambled to mount a defense. But they were facing a different Roman army. Where Varus had been predictable, Germanicus was cunning. Roman cavalry, the swift and deadly Aeli, struck the flanks of the gathering tribal forces. preventing them from forming a cohesive battle line. The legionary infantry advanced in the legendary testudo formation, their shields locked together to form an impenetrable wall against the storm of spears and arrows. For the Germanic warriors, who thrived on chaotic individual combat, the battlefield became a whirlwind of confusion. But for the Romans, discipline turned that confusion into opportunity. Every movement was calculated, every command executed with cold precision. The forest, once their greatest ally, was now a killing field engineered by their enemy. The Germanic forces, though initially stunned, were far from broken. Arminius, the brilliant tactician who had orchestrated the Teutoburg ambush, was not a man to be underestimated. He rallied his warriors, using their intimate knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. They regrouped in the dense woodlands, launching ferocious counterattacks from the shadows of the forest. Hoping to repeat the success they had against Varus, they would strike and then melt back into the trees, trying to bleed the legions dry. But Germanicus had learned the lessons of the past. Roman scouts and engineers worked in concert with the legions, turning the terrain against its masters. They built fortified camps each night, created clearings to prevent ambushes, and constructed causeways across the treacherous swamps that had doomed Varus's army. This time, the Romans outmaneuvered the ambushes. In one critical engagement, known as the Battle of the Long Bridges, Arminius nearly trapped a Roman column. But Roman discipline held firm. They fought their way out, and unlike Varus, their command structure did not collapse. In the larger battles that followed, like Edistaviso, Roman reinforcements would arrive at the most critical moments, smashing into the Germanic lines and decisively shifting the tide of battle. It was a brutal, grinding war of attrition, but Roman organization and superior logistics were winning. The climax of the campaigns came on the battlefield. The Germanic forces were finally crushed in open combat. Their courage was immense, but it was no match for the systematic, disciplined destruction unleashed by the legions. The survivors fled into the wilderness or surrendered to the overwhelming Roman power. In a poignant and symbolic act, the legions under Germanicus reached the site of the Teutoburg Forest disaster. There, they found the bleaching bones of their fallen comrades. With solemn reverence, they gathered the remains and honored the fallen with proper Roman burial rites, giving closure to a wound that had festered for years. They even recovered 2 of the 3 lost legionary eagles, symbols of Rome's honor, which were brought back in triumph. The borders were secured, the Rhine was reinforced, and the strategic lessons learned in blood and defeat were now etched into the very core of Roman military doctrine. The empire had proven its point. 3 legions were once lost, but Rome never forgets. Vengeance was swift, calculated, and brutal. The campaigns of Germanicus, while not leading to the permanent conquest of Germania, served their purpose. They restored Roman honor, decimated the tribal coalition that had defeated Varus, and demonstrated that no enemy could strike the empire with impunity. History remembers the Teutoburg Forest not only for the shocking defeat, but for the profound lessons it taught. It proved that strength is not enough. Without discipline, logistics, and strategy, even the mightiest army can fall. But when those elements are combined, they create a force that can overcome any disaster and exact a terrible price. Strategy decides survival. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more stories of the battles that shaped empires.